Welcome back to the Unpack Mindset, folks. This is Jesse, your host. Let's check out this video today, and we'll talk about it.
Things that I feel.
Spencer Pratt never held back during his time on the MTV hit series The Hills, which aired in the early 2000s.
Why can't I say that?
And Pratt isn't holding back now as he makes a run to become LA's next mayor.
If I don't get in, and we have 4 more years of these current plans and this current direction and not a real 180 change, everyone is in big trouble.
We spoke with Pratt in the Palisades where his home once stood. It was destroyed in the Palisades fire disaster. Pratt's parents, who also live in the Palisades, lost their house too.
The fire was not what motivated me to go after becoming the mayor of Los Angeles. It was the months after and discovering the layers of city negligence and then the cover-ups and the lies.
Business as usual is a death sentence for Los Angeles.
Since launching his mayoral campaign, Pratt has continued amassing a huge following on social media. The former reality TV show star says it's because he has a message with universal appeal.
My first 100 days is going to be enforcing the law and making moms feel safe with their kids at parks, in front of their schools. You cannot give zombies, yes, they were human beings, but once you go on fentanyl or super meth, you're no longer a human being. It's not about we need more beds, not inside safe, not more affordable housing. No, we need medical, mandatory treatment.
Do you identify with one particular party or the other? And if you do, how do you reach kind of everybody?
Yeah, thankfully it's a nonpartisan race, but if there was a letter next to my name, it would be an R, but that R would stand for results. I'm coming in here with no tribal politics. I'm coming here to represent all Angelenos.
Like other fire victims, Pratt and his family are dealing with the trauma of losing their homes. But Pratt says talking to Angelenos on the campaign trail gives him strength.
I'm in the best place I've been since the house and the town burned down because of the hope that I feel from all of Los Angeles when I go around talking to thousands of people a day.
Pratt says whether he rebuilds his home in the Palisades hinges on the outcome.
Man, it seems like California is it's like a crisis on repeat, right? It's always a different headline, same outcome. More money goes to these special committees, more announcement, and somehow it just seems like the problems get bigger and bigger, right? Sometimes I think, I feel like it's it's for the most part, I feel like the politics in California are heavily based on identity, and I believe that it keeps people from not focusing on policies, right? On governance and making sure that local and state infrastructure is taken care of. It seems like, well, let's start with homelessness, for example, right? People, keep getting told that it's complicated, that it's systematic. It's always a general term, right? There's always something generalized about homelessness or drug addiction and stuff like that. But the one thing that's not complicated, man, it's the math. Billions keep going out, right? They keep going out to all these programs and for some reason it seems like the tent encampments, they keep spreading and the entire neighborhoods, right? They just become open air shelters, right? And at some point you got to stop asking, why isn't this working? Right? Why aren't we able to mitigate fires in California? Why aren't we able to somehow solve anything, right? You know, who is this? Who? Where is all this money going to? And are we like feeding an ecosystem of corruption? You know, because the crisis keeps growing, folks, and the funding keeps flowing. And for some reason, the taxes keep going up in California, and nothing's getting solved. You know, it's a ecosystem that's formed around nonprofits, contractors, consultants, agencies, boards, you know, commissions, people who get paid whether the problem shrinks or explodes. And somehow it always explodes, man. It really does. It really does. It seems like we keep voting for people that keep pushing for political ideologies that really don't push policy. And I feel like we as citizens, especially in California, Los Angeles, you know, all the different the different counties, we need to come to a realization that this is becoming a pattern throughout, and it's been a pattern. It's been a pattern throughout all of California. You know, you look at the Palisades fire. You know, people watched homes burn, and reports pointed to gaps in prevention, oversight, coordination. Uh, then came the press conferences, the talking points, and we're reviewing procedures, but there was no accountability. From my understanding, the aqueducts are still empty, you know, and where was that one moment where people said, you know, this happened because we failed to do our job, right? Same story, you know, it's the same story everywhere you go. Criminal justice, you know, law enforcement departments, look at the prison closures. Facilities are shutting down, staff are being displaced, communities are left scrambling, and the public is told that it's all part of this savings plan. You know, folks, California don't save no money. California just blows money, man. If California was saving money, we all wouldn't be getting taxed like crazy. I think that we need to come to realization that the politicians in California are corrupt, man. They're just corrupt, and we're feeding a corrupt ecosystem. You know, and this has nothing to do with playing politics. It's just math, man. It's just math. You know, it is political, but I feel like at the end of the day, you know, you're footing the bill, right? No one can explain why capacity drops while addiction and mental illness and this whole mad repetition just keeps rising and rising and rising, right? I mean, I don't understand why people can't see that we're paying into a system that just keeps repeating itself. You know, no one can explain why the people living with the consequences never seem to be able to be the ones making the decisions. It's like the state has mastered the art of governing by announcement, man. You know, announce the funding, announce some special task force, you know, announce some new initiative, announce this historical investment, and hope that people don't notice that the results never match the rhetoric. I mean, after a while, it stops looking like coincidence, folks. It starts looking like a pattern of failure, a pattern of deflection, a pattern that of keeping voters so overwhelmed, you know, by this illusion of a crisis, right? And that they never stop to ask, you know, or they never really stop to notice what's really going on around them, right? Everything's just being dismantled, and people are just focused on bullshit, you know. um it's like people don't realize that they're just voting chaos and paying for chaos. You know, I feel like when people are exhausted, distracted, and desperate, they're easier to steer. You know, they're just easier to steer because they're worried about shit that's so irrelevant, and people are just getting rich. You know, it's easier to convince, you know, that the same strategies that already failed are somehow going to work this time, right? It's easier to keep focused on the next announcement instead of the last outcome. You know, I feel like people are slowly starting to wake up. They're looking at the streets, the fires, and the closures, especially here in California, the budgets, the promises, and they're realizing that something doesn't add up. And that's a good thing, man. You know, I realized this a long time ago. You know, I always just kind of just kept quiet because I always wanted to just kind of sit back and observe, right? And you know, a lot of times I hold back on saying a lot of things because I feel like society just isn't objective enough to really accept or reject what you're saying from a fundamental, I guess, from a standpoint where they actually know what's going on, you know. But I feel like we're turning things around slowly and gradually, and I'm glad that's happening. You know, I feel like people are just starting to realize that solutions don't come from repeating this same playbook that's already failed. You know, I feel like once people start asking the right questions, this whole pattern's going to crack, man. Anyway, wanted to pick your guys' brains. If you like my content, you know, like, subscribe, share. You guys have a good night.